This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Nigeria's Buhari sends special envoy to convey concerns over violence in South Africa. South Sudan leaders commit to setting up transitional government by November 12th. And local chess project in Lagos brings hope to one of city's impoverished slums. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up this hour. German Chancellor Angela Merkel heads to China for a 3-day official visit. And in sports, South Africa's Springboks seek redemption from 2015 shock defeat against Japan in friendly tie. We begin the hour in Southern Africa, where Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has sent a special envoy to South Africa to convey his concerns over xenophobic violence against foreign nationals. President Cyril Ramaphosa has already vowed to crack down on the gangs looting and stealing from foreigners. CGTN's Olisan Jamila has more.
It's been a turbulent few days in some parts of South Africa. Foreign nationals in those areas feel under siege as a result of violent attacks on them by some South Africans. Some governments on the continent and human rights organizations have responded with outright condemnations against those attacks. In the case of Nigeria, the President Muhammadu Buhari has sent a special envoy to South Africa to express his deep concerns about the situation. The envoy is to primarily seek assurances of the safety of Nigerians, but it's also to express Nigeria's displeasure at what the country sees as an attack on its countrymen. In a statement released by President Buhari's special advisor, the Nigerian president has noted with deep concern the attacks on Nigerian citizens and property in South Africa. As a result, Nigeria has also recalled its High Commissioner to South Africa. The envoy is expected to be given an ear by President Cyril Ramaphosa to hear their grievances and concerns. Olisan Jamila for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, police in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, are battling angry youths protesting against xenophobic attacks in South Africa. The youths tried to gain access into South African-owned mall Shoprite during the fracas. This comes as South African ambassador to Nigeria, Bobby Monroe, initiated peace talks with the nation's student and youth groups. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam has more.
Angry protesters face off with police along the Lugbe Expressway, the main road leading to the international airport. The protesters made a blockade with burning tires, causing a major gridlock. Their target, South African-owned mall Shoprite. South African businesses have been targeted across the country, most of them vandalized and burnt. They've now shut down operations, but security forces remain on high alert. At the South African Embassy, Ambassador to Nigeria, Bobby Monroe, has called for a meeting with youth groups to try and initiate peace talks.
This is our view. We believe that there should be a dialogue. Are we going to end up like this?
What major the South African Embassy are doing to end this problem? Because we are not here for what is it called, sit down on a round table and talk and discuss, but we need action.
And Mr. Monroe assures that South African authorities are on top of the situation.
And it is quite very clear that perpetrators of violence have been brought to book, and a total of 70 people were arrested. And it doesn't matter, and I want to reiterate, it doesn't matter whether perpetrators of violence are law enforcement officers, senior people wherever they work, or they are people who are well known. The law of South Africa is quite very clear. Regardless of who you are, the law takes its course.
Part of the deal is for youths from both countries to meet and hold dialogues. But the youth groups here are divided over the idea of talks. Outside the embassy, members of the National Students' Union body who had been invited for the dialogue shunned the invitation.
We have said again and again that they are playing with our intelligence. They are playing on our intelligence. This is a concerted effort to continually kill Nigerians. It is unacceptable.
There are rising concerns that the crisis could be threatening diplomatic relations between both countries. There have been several cases of xenophobic attacks in South Africa in the past, but this has spurred the biggest outrage here. Both governments have been in talks to try and put an end to the problem. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
Let's get the latest now from Angelo Coppola, who's live for us in Johannesburg, and Philly Haza live in Abuja. Angelo, tensions in Johannesburg and Pretoria appear to have calmed down somewhat. How is the situation today?
Peninah, it's been relatively calm and quiet overnight, and that's despite the sad news that 2 bodies had been found in a burnt-out shop in Alexandra to the northeast of Johannesburg during the cleanup operations in the area, and that follows those riots that happened there on Monday. We've done a tour around the hotspots this morning. There's a high police presence. The streets are generally empty in Jeppes, but the good news there is that the shops are starting to open again. In Hillbrow, it's still buzzing as usual, and in Braamfontein, where we are right now, it's busy as everyone's carrying about their business and as if nothing had happened. In Pretoria, it's been relatively quiet, with police maintaining that high visibility there. It's only in Ekurhuleni, which is on the eastern side of Johannesburg, where there were sporadic incidents of looting after some fake news spread, which caused panic and some disruption at some of the schools in the area. It's almost as if the hostilities have been put on hold, and we're hoping that that's going to carry on like that indefinitely. Peninah?
Okay, Phil, there in Nigeria, we saw some revenge attacks and massive looting of South African-owned brands. What is the situation today?
Well, thank you, Peninah. In Nigeria, I would say that the situation is relatively calm as we speak, because security operatives have been on hand to ensure that they prevent further reprisal attacks on South African businesses in Nigeria, like we saw a couple of days ago, especially on Tuesday night, where a shopping complex, ShopRite, was attacked in Lagos, and then early hours of Monday, MTN office was also attacked in another part of the southwestern part of Nigeria, that's in Oyo State. But, you know, so far the government has condemned those attacks, and not just condemned, but ensured that security operatives, you can actually find physical presence beefed up all around the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, and that's also replicated in different parts of the country to ensure that these attacks are forestalled. Also, the government is doing quite a number of things to ensure that, you know, citizens believe that they are actually on hand in ensuring that this attacks in South Africa would come to an end, like in different things from the government in terms of recalling its ambassador in South Africa, but he's due to arrive in Nigeria after the special envoy has also returned to brief the president.
Angelo, how is the government dealing with the issue of xenophobia, which criminals are taking advantage of?
Well, look, besides making speeches at WEF in Cape Town, there's not much that's been happening. We do know that the SAPS Minister, Beij Caid, has still scheduled another meeting with hostel dwellers and their leaders in Jeppes Town for Sunday, but it's unclear what the point of that meeting is going to be, because the minister has already met with the leaders and the dwellers of that hostel. Meanwhile, David Makura, the Gauteng Premier, had threatened to deploy the National Defence Force to quell the riots. He can't do that, obviously, because it's got to be taken, that decision's got to be taken at government level. We do know that it won't be taken lightly, and if at all, in fact. We also heard from Makura, who mentioned the fact that he plans, or his administration plans, to limit the number of and types of work or businesses that foreign nationals can operate in the Gauteng area. So at the moment, not a hell of a lot of news that we can report on. Obviously, that envoy meeting with the president from Nigeria will be a talking point once we get some confirmation of what's been discussed and what's been resolved there. But for now, it's very quiet and not a lot of direction or leadership coming from the South African government. Peninah?
And Phil, what more is the Nigerian government doing to protect its citizens in South Africa and also provide an enabling environment for South African firms operating in Nigeria?
Okay, so first of all, we know that there's been quite a number of information passed on, or instruction, I'll put it that way, for Nigerians living in South Africa to return home, especially the victims that have been affected by those attacks, as much as possible if they want to return home. And in view of that, a Nigerian airline operator known as Air Peace airline has actually voluntarily offered for free to bring back Nigerians living in South Africa, any one of them who would want to return home, safely away from the attacks. And that's actually one of the major stories that have hit the headlines as we speak today. And so the Nigerian government in South Africa, that's the embassy, will be working to ensure that most of the victims who have been affected will be brought back home, and that cost has been taken care of by the airline operator Air Peace. Also, the Inspector General of Police in Nigeria, Mohammed Adamu, has also given a statement saying that all South African outfits in terms of businesses and the embassies as well will be adequately protected. Security operatives are manning those areas. There are quite a number of them, but the Inspector General of Police has assured that there will be no form of picketing of those offices. He also says that at least 87 people have been arrested so far with regards to the reprisal attacks that occurred on South African businesses in Nigeria. So far, also the country will be expecting, as it should be, a statement from President Muhammadu Buhari, but that will definitely come after he has received some form of debriefing from all the special envoy, the Nigerian ambassador to South Africa, and some other government officials like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Once he's been debriefed, of course, the nation will be expecting a statement from President Muhammadu Buhari.
All right, Phil, thank you for that. Really has alive in Abuja. Angela Kopler in Johannesburg, thank you both for joining us. Now, South Sudan's Minister of Information, Michael Makuei, has announced that the revitalized transitional government of national unity will be formed on November 12th. Makuei was speaking at an event organized by the UN mission in South Sudan and the reconstituted Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission aimed at promoting peace following the signed agreement in September 2018.
2,000 residents from a neighborhood in the outskirts of South Sudan's capital, Juba, listened and watched as high-profile speaker after speaker at the UN Miss event articulated strategies and goals that would see the establishment of peace that has been, till now, staggering forward.
We women in this area were tired. At 7 p.m. we used to hear gunshots and we didn't know what this was about. As a result, we used to hide under our beds.
And the expectation is high as many look forward to the formation of the government.
There should be a new government that will be formed for the people of South Sudan, so that there should be also creation of job opportunities. We all need to work, we all need to eat, we all need to live in our houses in peace. So this formation of the government will be very important to the people of South Sudan.
High-ranking government officials have said this time there will be no delays after the current 6-month extension on the implementation of the peace agreement.
I'm here to confirm to you, and I want to tell you that this peace agreement that we have signed will be implemented and the government will be formed as stipulated, and on time, on 12th November. The government will be formed.
The head of UN Miss was also at hand to encourage the peace efforts of the troops in the country.
We have a ceasefire in place and we are moving forward together, building peace, trust and confidence among the various parties.
With the day's slogan, Building Durable Peace Together, it is hoped that residents in the area and the country will finally enjoy the dividends of long-awaited peace. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
The United Nations will remain in Libya despite attacks on its staff last month. UN envoy in Libya, Ghassan Salame, says that without commitment of key external actors engaged in Libya, the conflict would continue. A bombing in August killed 3 UN staff members and injured 2 others.
The situation in Libya continues to be grave. and the UN is taking no chances. More than 100 civilians have been killed and over 300 injured since Libya's Commander General Haftar launched his offensive on Tripoli in April.
The United Nations will remain in Libya. Naturally, we will work to mitigate further the risk to our personnel and operations. But the tragic irony is that the worse the situation on the ground becomes, the greater the need for our presence, mediation efforts, and provision of humanitarian assistance.
Salame is also calling for international talks to discuss Libya's future, a call that has been well received by Libyan ambassador to the UN, El Mahdi El Majerbi.
My country's delegation would like to reaffirm that confronting the assault on Tripoli is a national duty being carried out by the internationally recognized Government of National Accord, as any other government must do to preserve the security and stability of its people. We reiterate our position that the aggressor could never be a partner in the civilian democratic state.
The UN, however, says both of the main parties have violated the arms embargo. There are also concerns that the state's inability to control the situation has left women vulnerable.
I reiterate the call on the authorities in the East to investigate the enforced disappearance of Madame Sergawa and make the findings known. These authorities are responsible for the safety and security of the people under their territorial control, and they must take all necessary steps to clarify her whereabouts. The voices of Libya's elected representatives cannot be allowed to be quashed through intimidation or enforced disappearance.
The House of Representatives member, Siham Seregwa, was abducted from a home in Benghazi on the 17th of July. Since then, there has been no news regarding her disappearance. Chamgono, CGTN.
An anti-malarial medicine is expected to reduce malaria burden in young children in African countries. The seasonal malaria chemo prevention treatment has shown to prevent illness and death from malaria in children. In Niger, the project has already kicked off in several regions across the country. More than 4 million children under the age of 5 will receive the treatment.
The government of Niger has rolled out the seasonal malaria chemo prevention treatment. It involves the administration of monthly drugs to all children below 5 years during the high transmission season. Most childhood mortality from malaria occurs during the rainy season.
When I woke up this morning, I noticed that my daughter had very high temperature. She had a fever. That's why I immediately brought her here. After the treatment, her temperature has dropped and I feel she is better.
She has malaria with 40 degrees fever. We gave her an injection to stop the fever. The child is now at 35 degrees. As soon as a patient comes, we take their temperature. If it's higher than 39 degrees, we treat the fever. Then we take care of the patient.
Studies have shown that malaria is the most contracted disease and the leading cause of mortality in Niger. In 2017 alone, there were more than 2 million cases of malaria in the country.
Niger is a tropical zone that is favorable to mosquito development and thus the spread of germs that cause malaria. This disease manifests itself in headaches, chills, aches, stomach aches, with diarrhea, anemia, convulsions. It is important that people sleep under treated mosquito nets.
According to statistics, children below 5 years and pregnant women are at high risk of malaria infections. To help curb the problem, the government of Niger has embarked on a number of initiatives away from administering anti-malarial drugs. They include training health workers and distributing treated mosquito nets to the public. Chom Hono, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take our first break this hour. Coming up. Tunisia's Electoral Commission racing to organize polls within the constitution's timeline. And non-profit workshop in Egypt supports people with disability.
No one again, he can hold in guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In Tunisia, the Electoral Commission is racing to organize presidential elections after the death of leader Beij Caid Essebsi. The constitution stipulates that elections must be held 90 days after a head of state's death. There are a total of 26 candidates running for the presidential elections, and the first round of voting will take place just 7 weeks after the funeral.
Tunisia's Independent Higher Authority for Elections, ISIE, is rushing to register candidates and train poll workers, facing immediate pressure from a constitutional deadline of 90 days after the passing of the incumbent on July 25th.
It's a sprint to complete these trainings because things will accelerate now because the campaign is coming soon. We have early elections which will start on September 2nd, and everything must be in place for the control of the campaign. And just after September, we continue with the training of members and presidents of centers and polling stations.
The body, whose 9 members are elected by Parliament, brought the date of scheduled polls forward by 2 months in hopes of protecting the country's nascent democracy.
The total number of people who will be trained is more than 55,000. They include screening officers, polling station officers, president's assessors, and presidents of voting centers.
In a midsummer dash, the ISIE stocked up on indelible ink and sorted through nearly 100 candidate applications, selecting a final list of 26 hopefuls.
The ISIE has experience. It has already organized the elections 6 times, so it has this experience to put all this in place. But it's always complicated because the numbers are important and there are many details because of the change in text, the political climate, and the ISIE must adapt to all of that.
ISIE has registered some 1.5 million mostly young new voters this year, a success given that 65% of voters abstained in the first democratic municipal polls in 2018.
We learn from past experiences, so the ISIE has revised its text and added more details to control the campaign, such as controls on social media networks, and it is working on training to control the financing. So with more details, there is more refinement.
Accusations of corruption and arrest have swirled in the lead-up to the polls, pushing the ISIE to quickly assure the voters that all registered candidates are free to run for the presidential polls. The electoral body has overseen a series of historic polls following the 2011 overthrow of longtime leaders in El-Badin bin Ali in an uprising which sparked revolts across the Arab world. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Let's cross over to Egypt, where a non-profit workshop is dedicated to produce equipment that is comfortable and suitable for people with motor impairment. The Irada workshop also tours villages in efforts to reach the underprivileged people with disabilities. Here's CGTN's Adel Mahri with the details.
Irada in Arabic translates to will. The name of this workshop reflects the mission these technicians work daily for, to assist the most underprivileged people with motor impairment. And to cater to their needs, this non-profit organization hires people with similar disabilities to design practical and comfortable assistive equipment.
I am the most knowledgeable person about the flaws of any crutch because I've used so many. I know the strength and weakness of it. So when we manufacture an equipment, we add to it our decades of experience of being impaired, so the first timers wouldn't suffer. And we always develop our designs.
Gamil Armanios has traveled to the United States on a scholarship to learn modern methods and solutions in manufacturing assistive technologies. This workshop produces and modifies equipment like crutches, wheelchairs, and prosthetic limbs.
The imported equipment isn't made to sustain the environment or the streets in Egypt. Our products are tailored to sustain these tough conditions, but also don't require frequent maintenance. And our workers live the struggle of impairment, so when they design, they work on solutions that will be comfortable for them.
Irada's services extend beyond the walls of their base here on the outskirts of the Egyptian capital. This vehicle is a mobile workshop that pays visits to some of the most remote and poorest villages in the country. And that's to deliver and maintain equipment for those who are incapable of traveling to major cities where similar services are available.
I rarely read a job announcement requesting people with disabilities. When I saw the opening in Irada stating that all the workshop will be with motor impairment, I got excited. Our dream began with this vehicle. We toured most villages of Upper Egypt where people with disability suffer the most.
This humble facility has drew smiles over thousands of faces, earning the nickname the Poor's Truck.
Once I met an old lady who had been forced to stay at home because the wheelchair she had didn't suit her impairment. We've modified her device and saw her go out to the street for the first time. She cried and thanked us for empowering her to go out on her own.
Irada produces about 1,000 assistive devices annually. They always plan to expand their production and services capacities. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Chess, a board game famous for its reliance on strategy, is gaining popularity in Nigeria. A year-old project dubbed Chess in Slums is hoping to push forward this trend by empowering young, marginalized children through teaching them the game. CGTN's Brent Usson brings us more on this story.
Seasoned player Tunde Onakoya started the Chess in Slums project last September in the neighborhood of Ikorodu. The goal of the club is to provide a space to play and learn the game for the young inhabitants of the slum. Held beneath a makeshift tent in the courtyard of a local bar, the program has already drawn a following.
You teach them the beginners, as in the basics, the name of the chess pieces, their points, the values, then how many squares are in the chessboard, and how a pawn moves and attacks.
The youngest children sing rhymes about chess to help them master the rules, while the older ones focus on the more intense games. They use mobile phone apps to time their moves and record the matches in notepads.
They're learning soft skills from playing chess, skills like critical thinking, like good communication skills, creativity. They're learning how to think strategically. They're learning problem-solving skills. And these skills are skills that will be relevant throughout their existence.
Onakoya works with private schools as a consultant. Last year, he started the club in Ikorodu specifically to reach disadvantaged children.
Make me to think fast, to understand something quickly.
Chess make me calculate fast.
Chess is helping me to be a mechanical engineer by sending me to school and buying me books to read. I want to be a mechanical engineer when I grow up.
The attention the project has generated has helped shine a spotlight on more of these marginalized children. Videos of the budding chess masters shared on social media also showcase some of their other talents that have often been overlooked. Amen. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, has reiterated her 4 proposed actions and stressed the withdrawal of the controversial fugitive bill at a press conference this morning. The 4-action plan was announced by Lam on Wednesday, including the withdrawal of the bill. She has also appointed new members to her body, handling complaints against the police, promised direct dialogue with communities, and a review by academics and advisors of Hong Kong's social problems.
To answer your question about whether my announcement on actions yesterday were too little, too late. I suggest, and I hope very much, that this will be looked at in context. I have announced a package of 4 actions. So each of those actions requires a process of deliberation, and taken together, I hope that they would provide a basis for a dialogue and help Hong Kong to break the current impasse.
She also took questions from our reporter.
CGTN and CCTV. As you have just mentioned, you will invite people from different social class, political views and background to discuss the social issues. Can you give us more details on what participants that you will invite to discuss the social issues? Thank you. We have to have dialogue with the residents of the public. I have used some examples. For example, right now we have some housing issues, land issues, land shortage, and opportunities for the younger generations, social mobilities, public welfare, and participation in government decisions, etc. But I believe with this dialogue platform, we could get to hear more opinions from the public.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up in business news. German Chancellor Angela Merkel visits China on a 3-day official visit. And artificial intelligence technologies on display at the World Economic Forum on Africa in Cape Town, South Africa.
In 70 years, China has undergone unprecedented transformation. From its old industrial base in the northeast to its new manufacturing powerhouse in the southeast and to its emerging southwest. CGTN offers you a panoramic view of contemporary China. Our crews will travel along 3 different routes and come to you live from dozens of locations and 3 mobile studios. Join us for an all-inclusive look at China on our TV channel and digital platforms, September the 9th to the 20th. It is New China, then and now, in celebration of the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, only on CGTN.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel is expected in China on Thursday for a 3-day official visit. Accompanied by a high-ranking business delegation, Merkel's visit to Beijing comes at a time of concern over economic issues as well as protests in Hong Kong. CGTN's Natalie Carney explains.
Cars, electric vehicles to be exact, one of the most promising sectors between the 2 economic partners. While China presents the largest EV consumer market in the world, Germany presents some of the best minds behind its development. Chinese car manufacturer NIO has been tapping into that know-how with close to 200 employees in Munich. Zhang Hui is the company's vice president for Europe and the vice chair of the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in Germany. He will be one of the many businessmen heading to China for Chancellor Merkel's visit.
2018, the bilateral trade number is 200 billion euros. So it's actually another new height between the both countries. And China stays as the biggest trade partner for Germany. And on the other hand, Germany is the biggest trade partner for China in Europe. And besides that, both countries actually are very big in favor of free trade and globalization.
This will be Ms. Merkel's 12th visit to China since she became chancellor back in 2005, proving the importance that she gives their mutually beneficial bilateral relations. And as on previous trips, she is expected to continue the dialogue with Beijing on an EU-China investment treaty, which many are hoping can be achieved by the time Germany takes over the rotating EU presidency in September of next year.
With Brexit looming and the threat of Europe's own trade war with the US, Germany has called for a unified stance from all EU nations in regards to their handling of China to further secure economic ties. Yet, foreign investment regulations, protests in Hong Kong, and security issues with Chinese telecoms giant Huawei keep many EU nations cautious about becoming too close with Beijing, says China expert Omar Serrano.
So we do see some areas where there's clearly potential for cooperation, or where there is cooperation, like climate change and so on, where clearly both countries see eye to eye, and you know, there's a lot that can be achieved there, or you know, the nuclear deal with Iran, for example. But there are, of course, other areas where there's really concerns, and where things are, I mean, we mentioned Hong Kong protests. That's, I think, one issue that Merkel will certainly bring up, and there's a lot of concern here about that. The priority, I think, is on the economic side, though.
And that's where the strength in their mutually beneficial relationship lies, says Mr. Hui.
There's more and more Chinese so-called FDI, so foreign direct investment, into Germany, especially in the automotive industry. On the other hand, Germany invested in China, even last year, over 500 new FDI projects in China. We need each other, and we really live with each other.
While in China, Ms. Merkel is expected to meet with the Chinese president and premier, and with a large business delegation, take part in talks with the China-Germany Economic Advisory Committee. Natalie Carney for CGTN in Munich.
Shifting now to Brexit matters, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government is in limbo. On Wednesday, British MPs turned down Johnson's motion for an early general election. At the same time, the lawmakers backed a bill aimed at blocking a no-deal Brexit. With more on this, here's Naweed Jabakil.
It's been a whirlwind 24 hours or so for British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and one that's really weakened his position and his pledge to take Britain out of the European Union. On Wednesday, lawmakers here decided to push through with a bill that would essentially block a no-deal Brexit, forcing Mr. Johnson to go to the EU and extend the current deadline from October 31st to the end of January next year. In response, Mr. Johnson decided to call a snap election, suggesting a date of October 15th. But for that too, he needs Parliament's approval. In another vote and another defeat for the Prime Minister, lawmakers decided to reject that move. Speaking shortly afterwards, Boris Johnson pointed the finger clearly at the opposition and said that the leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, was afraid to go to the public.
Mr. Speaker, 48 hours ago, he was leading the chants of stop the coup, let the people vote. Now he's saying stop the election and stop the people from voting. I can only speculate as to the reasons behind his hesitation. Mr. Speaker, the obvious conclusion is, I'm afraid, that he does not think he will win.
What it means is that Boris Johnson's threat to leave the European Union without a deal look a lot less convincing. His leadership has also been dealt a serious blow. We're no closer to knowing when and indeed if Britain will leave the European Union. But what the political drama of the last 24 hours has highlighted to the Prime Minister is that Parliament and its elected representatives will have their say on Brexit. Naweed Jabakil, CGTN, London.
So what happens next in the ever-changing Brexit saga? Here's a quick look.
On Wednesday, the House of Commons passed a bill against a so-called no-deal Brexit, but it isn't a done deal yet for the MPs. On Friday, the bill goes to the House of Lords, who can pass the bill or send it back to the lower house with their own amendments. The Conservative peers had proposed almost 100 amendments to the no-deal Brexit bill, but now the government says it will not stall passage of the bill in the upper house. When the House of Lords passes the no-deal Brexit bill with amendments, it goes back to the House of Commons and put to another vote. Upon passing a second vote, it goes to the Queen for her approval. When the Queen gives approval, Boris Johnson will be forced to request another Brexit extension from the EU. However, the Prime Minister has other options. First, he can introduce a law in Parliament calling for an early election. The vote requires only a simple majority to pass. Experts believe that given the opposition to Johnson's government, such a vote will not gain enough support. Second, Johnson can advise the Queen against giving her royal assent to the bill. In line with convention, the Queen is expected to decide based on the advice of the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. If the Queen refuses the advice, Johnson can reject the will of Parliament by contesting the bill's legality and arguing that it's not binding on his government. With general elections ruled out for now, the British Prime Minister has little room to take Britain out of the European Union on October 31st without a deal.
The South African government has announced the launch of a new affiliate centre in partnership with the World Economic Forum Centre for the Fourth Industrial Revolution Network. The centre will act as a focal point for South African stakeholders to discuss 4IR and its applications. CGTN's Elisa Njamela with the details.
There's great enthusiasm for the Fourth Industrial Revolution here in South Africa. South Africa has recently joined China, Japan and India in hosting a center affiliated to the World Economic Forum Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The center is being established to prepare South Africa for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The center's objective is to bring together business leaders, governments, startups, civil society, academia, and international organizations to co-design and pilot innovative new approaches to policy and governance in the 4IR. But outside of that affiliate center, are we as a country ready for the 4IR?
We're getting the country ready to make sure that it can have a meaningful impact. Most importantly for us is to make sure that people do not only get to be consumers of technology, but they also get to derive an economic spin-off, which is why we've decided to invest a lot in skills, both for the employed and unemployed. That's one thing, because if we are to have people that must be innovative, people that must drive the software that the Fourth Industrial Revolution is about, they must know how to. But most importantly, the people have to map out their own niche in the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
In April this year, President Cyril Ramaphosa appointed 30 people to the Presidential Commission on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The commission will assist government in taking advantage of the opportunities presented by the digital industrial revolution. The task of the commission, which will be chaired by the president, is also to identify relevant policies, strategies, and action plans that will position South Africa as a competitive global player.
If you want to be the hub of Africa, we've got to make sure that we have all the relevant skills that must not only feed to South Africa, but they must also feed into Africa. But most importantly, we've got the best energy sector in South Africa. We've got the best mining sector in South Africa. And now as I'm talking to you, we are changing the laws. We are creating incentives, and we are working on strategies that must say we're enhancing investment call. We build more innovation centers to encourage young people to be innovative and be able to come up with solutions that must take South Africa to a higher level.
The impact of 4IR is expected to be felt throughout all sectors of the formal economy, and government wants to ensure that all sectors are ready. Earlier this year, South Africa's cabinet approved the white paper on science, technology, and innovation. It identifies 4IR as a key focus. Many critics point out that the advent of 4IR contains many dangers such as unemployment, monopolies, and private infringement, to name a few. Still, they all agree that everyone should embrace it, as it has become and will continue to be a feature in all our lives. Elisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And staying in South Africa, the 2019 Artificial Intelligence Expo Africa has kicked off in Cape Town. The event is Africa's largest artificial intelligence trade show. This year's edition is set to highlight case studies as well as showcase the application of AI and data science through technology and cloud platforms. CGTN's Beryl Orr reports.
Over 700 delegates and 50 exhibitors from across Africa are gathered here to showcase their latest artificial intelligence startups. This year, the AI Expo Africa is all about real-world applications and trends.
The theme is obviously AI. There's a lot of hype around AI. AI is a buzzword, and what we're finding is in many instances, governments, businesses and organizations don't really understand AI and what it can do for them. So the theme of what we're doing at the moment is largely an educational theme. What we're trying to do is educate governments, businesses and organizations across the continent on what AI actually entails, and then begin not only understand at a very simple level, but then begin implementing it in their organizations and businesses.
Demonstrating this robot designed by his team is Olivier Lee. Lee is a professor at the University of Bordeaux in France. His team is very clear about their goal.
I'm here to demonstrate the robot, the Sigma-Ban robot that we designed in our team. And the goal is to attend the RoboCup competition. RoboCup is a worldwide competition, actually the largest, the biggest competition of robotics, of autonomous robotics. I mean robotics and IA. Well, there are several challenges in the competition, but the main and the historical one is the soccer. So we play soccer. The rules are very simple. You design a robot, an autonomous robot, humanoid or with wheel, and you make it play soccer, and we count the goals.
AI Expo Africa is the largest business-focused artificial intelligence trade event on the continent. Now in its second year, the program has been split into 4 tracks and 8 workshops. Reason being, many clients are seeking practical and useful strategies for their businesses to incorporate artificial intelligence now and in the future.
At the Century City Convention Center, at the AI Africa Expo, so very excited to be part of the event and looking forward to which technologies we can leverage inside our business in order to engage better with clients. There's lots of disruption within the financial services industry, and we definitely want to be ahead of the game.
Buzzwords such as artificial intelligence and the 4th industrial revolution are popping up in conversations more and more these days. But at this event in Cape Town, businesses are looking forward to explore the future's real-world applications. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Coming up in sports, South Africa's Springboks seek redemption from 2015 shock defeat against Japan in friendly tie.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout,